welcome back to Homestead on a Prayer. I'm out here today in the chicken yard and I want to talk to you guys a little bit about chickens. So I know right now it's still winter, we're really heavily in the middle of winter, but it's the time of year when I know a lot of us really start dreaming about spring. And if you're interested in chickens, you might be thinking about getting some chickens this spring. So the main thing that I want to talk about today is if you're thinking about getting chickens, especially for the first time, you might be trying to decide, should I get chicks? You know, you go into Tractor Supply, or there's so many places you can find those beautiful little fluff balls that are just so adorable. Or you might want to get started pullets, which are a little bit older. It's basically the equivalent of a teenager. So those would be chickens that are not laying yet. So I'm just going to talk today a little bit about the advantages of each approach, the advantages of buying chicks versus the advantages of getting chickens that are a little bit older. Our first flock of chickens we actually got as started pullets, which means that they weren't chicks anymore. They had their feathers, they were ready to live out in the coop, but they weren't laying eggs yet. And this past spring, we got another flock of chickens. We've since integrated them together and we now have one single flock, but we got those as day-old chicks. So first of all, let's talk about the advantages of getting day-old chicks. They are really irresistible and tempting, and there are a lot of advantages to getting your chicken flock as baby chicks as well. The first advantage is that it's likely to be quite a bit cheaper. You know, if you buy started pullets from a breeder or a farm, they're going to have invested a lot of resources and a lot of time into, yes, Clint knows all about investing lots of resources and time, as he's telling you right now. Clint is my rooster. He actually was from our batch of day-old chicks that we got this past spring. We'll get to him in a minute. So buying day-old chicks is quite a bit cheaper because if you're buying started pullets, that means someone has invested a lot of time and resources into raising those chickens. They've invested a lot of feed. They've invested a lot of time in caring for those chicks and just making sure that they stay healthy and grow healthy. So by buying the chicks, you'll be doing a lot of that yourself, which means that you're going to spend quite a bit less on chicks than you will on pullets. So the second advantage that I found of buying your chicks as day-old chicks is that there's a lot more selection available when it comes to breed. Now, started pullets are basically the breed that the breeder or the farm or whoever you get them from has chosen to invest a lot of time in. They'll usually just choose a few of their more popular breeds to raise to pullets. Where day-old chicks, it's really easy. A lot more people offer those. You can find them at Tractor Supply. You can even order them online through hatcheries. Or my favorite approach is to find a local breeder. But either way, you'll find a much larger selection of chicken breeds available if you purchase them as day-old chicks. Now, that may not matter to you if the breeds that you're looking for are really common. You may be able to find them as started pullets as well. But if you're looking for a little bit more of a specialty or an unusual breed, you'll probably have a lot better luck finding that breed as chicks rather than pullets. The next advantage that I want to mention kind of goes hand in hand with what we just talked about, which is that day-old chicks are usually a lot easier to source. Now, in the spring, there'll be chicks everywhere, especially if you live in a fairly rural area. Even Tractor Supply, you know, they have their chick days in the spring. You can go into the store and all those little tiny chicks will tempt you with their little tiny peeps and just their fluffy feathers. It's so easy to find them. And especially if you live in an area with a lot of farms, then there may be farms that are hatching eggs and selling chicks as well. And in addition, as I mentioned, there are a lot of hatcheries that you can purchase from online. If you live somewhere where you can't find chicks locally, then there's a lot of resources to get them in the mail as well. We did find one breeder near us that offers started pullets, obviously, because that's what we started with. But we did have to drive about an hour and a half to pick up those chickens, which was completely fine with us. But it's just something to be aware of, that it might be a little bit more challenging to find a source for pullets than for day-old chicks. One other major advantage that I found to getting the chickens as day-old chicks was that because they were used to me from the very beginning, they were handled a lot. We spent a lot of time feeding them, playing with them, just sitting with them, and just letting them get used to us and get used to our voices. They grew up a lot more used to being handled and a lot friendlier. So for the most part, the flock of chickens that we got as babies are a lot more used to us and a lot friendlier with us than the flock that I got as started pullets. Now, there are some exceptions to that. I do have one chicken from my pullet flock that is really friendly and will actually, sometimes begrudgingly, but she'll let us pick her up here and there. A lot of them will eat out of my hand from both flocks. But I have found overall that the flock we got as little chicks is friendlier to us, and they're more used to us or just more comfortable with us. So that may not be something that matters to you, depending on what your goal is with raising chickens, but it is something to be aware of. And if it is really important to you that your chicken flock be really used to you and really friendly, you may want to either consider getting day-old chicks, or you might want to make a point to get pullets from a breeder who maybe breeds small batches and handles the chickens a lot. And that way they will be used to human contact. So the final advantage that I want to mention to baby chicks is just that they're so cute. I mean, who can resist those little balls of fluff? Of course, the downside of that is that they only stay little and fluffy for such a short time. But it's just really fun to have those in your house just for those couple weeks that they're tiny. And it's really fun, especially if you have kids. Of course, you do have to make sure that your kids are careful with the chickens, because when they're little babies like that, they can be very delicate as well. But it's just a lot of fun to have those little fluff balls in your house. So that, again, may or may not be an advantage, but it was something that we really enjoyed, was just having those fluffy little babies in the house with us. So now that we've talked about the advantages of starting your chicken flock as little baby chicks, let's talk about the advantages of getting started pullets instead, because there are advantages to that approach as well. The first one that I found is that you don't need all the extra equipment that you need when you're getting baby chicks. Now, baby chicks, as I mentioned, it is cheaper to buy baby chicks, but if it's the first time you're raising them, there is a lot of equipment you're going to need to get, which can actually make your first time with the babies more expensive. You'll need things like a brooder, you'll need a heat source, you will need some way to keep them inside your house, or at least in a warm, heated area in the beginning. Because they do need, before they get their adult feathers, they really do need access to heat. So if it's your first time with chickens, getting started pullets makes it so that you get to avoid buying all that extra equipment. Now, kind of going along with that, the second advantage that I want to mention about getting your chicken flock as started pullets is that it's easier. Now, it's less of a financial investment. It's also less of a time commitment. If you get started pullets, they most likely will be mature enough and feathered enough, old enough to go directly out into your chicken coop. You shouldn't have to worry about keeping them in your house. When we got our first flock of chickens, they were about 12 to 14 weeks old, and even though we actually got them at the end of winter, we were able to stick them right out in the chicken coop that very first day that we got them, because they were old enough, they were used to the cold, they had their adult feathers, they were ready to be able to handle the cold. So that can definitely be an advantage. It is a little bit easier. Now, the third benefit of getting started pullets is once again a little bit related to the other two, which is that if you get them as older chickens, they're going to be past that really fragile baby chick stage. Now, some chickens, when they hatch, some are just stronger than others. And I don't know if it's a genetic thing or if it has something to do with how they were incubated as an egg, but some chickens are just naturally stronger. We actually, when we got our little baby chicks this spring, we had one that was noticeably weaker than the others, and she actually died overnight the first night that we had her. And that was really sad. So by getting them as pullets, you're avoiding that really fragile chick stage. You know, there's obviously still things that can happen to your chickens even as adults, but they're just a lot more fragile as babies. So by getting chickens that are past that stage, you are making things a little easier on yourself and potentially avoiding a little bit of heartbreak. Now, I did mention that we're going to talk about Clint, my rooster. So let's go back to him now. Now, another significant advantage of buying started pullets is that you know what you're getting. Now, if you want a rooster in your flock, that's great. We have actually really enjoyed having Clint. We did not plan on having him. We actually ordered him as a female chick. He clearly is not. But we have actually really been enjoying having him anyway, and he's been protecting our girls. He helps find food for them. You know, a rooster can add a lot of benefits to your flock, but there's many reasons why you may not want one or may not be able to have one. And if that's the case, buying started pullets is a little bit safer, because by the time they are old enough to be called a pullet, to go right out into the coop, you should have a pretty good idea whether it's a female or a male. So there's a lot less room for surprise there. Now, as I said, it worked out great in our case, but it may not always work out great if you end up with an unexpected rooster. So by buying started pullets, then you know exactly what you're getting and you don't have to worry about some unexpected surprises like that. So the final advantage that I want to talk about getting your chickens a little bit older as pullets is that you don't have to wait as long for eggs. You know, most people, when you get a flock of backyard chickens, the primary reason that you're getting chickens is because you want those fresh, delicious eggs. And while it's really exciting to raise your chickens up from babies, there can be a really long wait for eggs. Our flock that we got in May, we have the one rooster who, you know, obviously has not given us any eggs, and we have 4 hens. 3 of those hens have been laying for us, but the 4th hen has actually still not laid yet. A lot of that is going to be breed dependent, but you're probably going to have to wait quite a while if you get your chickens as little chicks. If you get them as started pullets, the wait will be significantly less, so that's another advantage as well. So it is starting to rain. I'm not sure if you can hear or see that, so I'm going to head inside. My chickens are still out. They don't really seem to care about the rain. So I'm just going to leave them out to forage and find some delicious free-range treats. So thank you so much for hanging out with me in the chicken yard today. I hope that this was helpful. And if you have any other advantages or disadvantages of either method that I mentioned, go ahead and leave those in the comments because I would love to hear from other people. As I mentioned, these are just the advantages and disadvantages that I noticed in my personal experience, but I'm sure many of you have had very different experiences than I have, so I'd love to hear from you too. I hope you're having a great day. I hope that you're looking forward to expanding your chicken flock or getting chickens for the first time, and I can't wait to see you soon. I'll see you next time.